So we'll start a new topic today in the Kav Yashar, Perek Nun Aleph. It'll be Kishadam Mekadesh et Gufo v'Rav v'Shechina Shora Alav. So a person wants to make himself holy. A person wants to get close to Hashem. So a person that wants to get close to Hashem, he wants to make himself more kadosh, more holier person. When a person makes himself holy, the Shekhinah, Hashem's godly presence, we'll call it, Kiddusha dwells inside of a person. That's really a lot also of where a person's Ruach HaKodesh comes from, where a person's connection with Hashem comes from, where a person's attachment with Hashem comes from. It says, Vayam HaChanecha Kadosh. He says, just like there is, many different machanot, like Shechina, many to say when we were in the desert, it was different areas. So to also, when it comes to the body of a person and his organs, it's also considered a machaneh. What does that mean? He says over here that when a person sanctifies himself, his body in of itself becomes a dwelling place for the Shekhinah. Just like Klal Yisrael in the desert had the encampment, the makom for the Shekhinah, so to also a person's body, also when a person makes himself holy, the Shekhinah dwells within him. The Shekhinah is a divine presence, a certain Kedusha that dwells within a person. That when a person takes his limbs and his organs and he sanctifies them, then he himself is also considered the dwelling place of the Shekhinah. As it says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will sanctify himself, right, amongst Klal Yisrael, v'shechanti b'tocham, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will dwell amongst Klal Yisrael. Not only does Hashem dwell His presence amongst Klal Yisrael as a whole, but also every single individual, as an individual, also can have the Ashat Shekhinah, can have the Shekhinah dwell with him. But when a person is going in a way that he shouldn't be going, and he's doing things that he shouldn't be doing, then the other way around. Right? He takes the Tumah. There's Tumah also in the world, and there's Kiddusha in the world. When a person behaves in a way, when a person does Averot, when a person does things which are negative, so he tells Averot, those Averot contaminate a person. Those Averot, for example, if a person contaminates his heart becomes contaminated with Tumah. A person can contaminate his mind, his eyes, his whole body. A person can either make himself holy, or a person can either contaminate himself. But when he says over here, when a person's goof, when a person's body is holy, right, then he becomes that chariot for the Shekhinah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it, that people should make themselves holy, and that people should sanctify themselves, and the Shekhinah should dwell amongst the actual person individually. And when a person is actually zocheh to have that hashat Shekhinah, it elevates a person spiritually to a very high level. Right, which is not the other way. When a person goes the other way, chas v'shalom, he takes the Kiddusha and he pushes it away from himself, and he takes the Tumah and he brings it into himself. So then the person becomes a contaminated person, becomes Tamei. Like the Rambam says something similar, but in simpler words. The Rambam says that a person that does a lot of Averot, or a person that lives like a wicked person, he becomes spiritually sick. He sees everything upside down. He sees right is wrong is right. Such a person, his mind and his body is so contaminated that he perceives everything from the Tumah. His whole perception, everything he sees, everything he feels, it's all from the Tumah. It's all from there's no Kiddusha in such a person. So to over here, he says one of the things that make a person's body holy. So say a person says, I want to sanctify myself more. I want to become more Kadosh. I want to become more Tahor. I want to get closer to Hashem. What's one of the main things that sanctify a person's body? He says, Yidagdek Adam b'kriyat Shema, b'kavanah gedolah milah b'milah. A person says Shema, word for word. In Shema, there's all the ta'amim, right? All the ta'amim in Shema. That a person says Shema Yisrael, with all the ta'amim b'digduk. He should say word for word. B'kavanah gedolah, with tremendous amount of kavanah. He says Kriyat Shema has 248 words, which are corresponding to a person's 248 organs, and the Zohar says every time a person writes Kriyat Shema, every time a person says Kriyat Shema properly, every single word that he reads brings Kiddusha into different parts of a person, different parts of his body. And he says not only that, when he says the words of Kriyat Shema word by word, and it brings the Kiddushan into a person's body, 248 words of Kriyat Shema bring Kiddusha to 248 organs of a person. And not only that, he says, that when a person says Kriyat Shema with Kavanah, slowly, word for word, it brings Kiddusha and Taharan onto a person's body and all of a person's organs, and it saves all those organs from all different types of sicknesses and suffering, he says. Because since he brings all the Kiddusha into all those organs, it removes the Tumah, and it also protects those organs from becoming sick. But say he says if a person doesn't read Kriyat Shema b'kavanah, right? He reads quickly, doesn't really pay attention to what he's saying. He's thinking about something else. His mouth is talking, but his mind is somewhere else. He says when a person says Kriyat Shema like that, not only does he not absorb Kiddusha into his neshama, but the other way around, right? He absorbs Tumah into his Evarim. Instead of making his 248 organs holy, by saying the words properly, word by word, by saying it with the lack of kavanah, he's actually making his organs more tameh. He's contaminating himself. He's bringing tumah upon himself. Chas v'shalom lo aleinu. Right? And he says through that, a person also could bring different types of pains onto his body and different types of sicknesses. Chas v'shalom. He says also you should know. He says when a person has different types of sufferings that come onto a person, if a person accepts his suffering with love, if a person accepts the suffering and the difficulties that a person has in life, and he accepts it, he knows that it's from Hashem, and he accepts it from Hashem, belief shalem, full-heartedly, he says those sufferings that a person receives are able to purify his body and make him holy like you can't imagine. Meaning to say, when a person is suffering, or a person is going through a difficult time, or a person is having Yisurim, and a person accepts those Yisurim with love, knowing that they're from Hashem in order to purify him, that Kadosh Baruch Hu put koach, he put energy, he put the ability in the suffering of a person, that if a person accepts it with love, to sanctify his neshama. When a person suffers and he accepts it with love, that suffering purifies the person's soul. Like jewelry refinement. It purifies the person's soul. And he says it makes a person very kadosh, very holy. That when a person accepts his Yisurim with love. And he brings the Zohar that says that. He says a person's soul is like a candle. He says just like the nature of a candle, when it doesn't light so well, right, you move it around a little bit and it lights. But he said that only applies if the candle is a good candle, if you move it around it'll light. But if it's a bad candle, you move it around it'll extinguish. He says so to a person as well. People could sin, and people could extinguish the flame in their soul. People could sort of not feel anything spirituality. And the neshama doesn't properly light. So Kadosh Baruch Hu brings suffering onto a person in order to shake him up a little bit, to relight himself. But if a person will accept it with love, he will re-bring that neshama into himself. He'll re-bring that holiness and that kiddusha into his neshama. And he'll be able to arouse himself and pick himself up spiritually. But a person does not accept his suffering with love. He says not only doesn't he not get his neshama to be purified, but the suffering that he'll receive when the more a person goes against it, the poor person doesn't accept it, right? It brings the person down and down and down. Chas v'shalom. And that not only doesn't elevate a person, but also bring a person down. So there's two things that we mentioned out of many things that make a person holy, make his neshama more holy. One is to say Kriyat Shema with kavanah. Every single word to be b'kavanah, it sanctifies the person's body fully. Two, when a person is having difficulties or suffering in life, he should accept it with love. That when a person accepts the difficulties and the complications of life with love, and he knows it's a chesed from Hashem, such yisurim, such suffering refines a person's neshama and makes a person holier, right? And makes a person more everything, but especially Shema Yisrael. Because Shema Yisrael has 248 words, and the 248 words are corresponding to 148 organs of a person, and every word sanctifies a different organ. Now, I wanted to discuss something, yeah.
Because when I asked the Gemara in Brachot, they asked Tanaim that they were having Yisurim. They said, are the Yisurim Chavivim you want? And they said, now them, Los Charam. So how come they weren't Makabal them with the Hava?
It's not that they weren't Makabal and Hava, they would prefer not to because it would interfere with their learning. So it says like this, that Tefilin, now, I want to go on to a series a little bit, just to discuss a little bit about the laws of writing tefillin and mezuzot and stuff like that, so we just have a little bit more of clarity of what it consists of. I found this pamphlet, they were giving them out, and it gives you all the halachot, like in short, just exactly what you need to know. And I think it's important to know that people should have an idea of something that they're putting on every single day, that they should know what they're putting it on, what it's made out of, what it consists of, and what goes into making it. So we'll start with halakha aleph. He says, first of all, he says our tefillin inside, and the hand tefillin we have one parasha, one long one, it's all wrapped up, and the head tefillin we have four. What are the four parashot? We need to we have four also in the hand, but it's really one just wrapped up. But in the head we have four separate ones, right? What are they? Parashat Kadesh, Parashat Ve'aki, then we have Shema Yisrael, and then Vayam Shemuan. We need to say we have four parashot in order, and every parasha, right? You have to write all the letters. Vaya, right? Put the tagim, you have to put the crowns on top. Every single letter that you have to write. And not only that, he said the halacha is that when you're writing the parashot in the tefillin and the mezuzah, every single letter needs to be written in order. Not only every single letter needs to be written in order, every single parasha also needs to be written in order. That he says that if a person was writing and then he realized later when he finished and he realized 3 lines ago he was missing one letter, he's not allowed to go back now and put that letter there. The tefillin is pasul. So it takes a putting in his hand. He just wrote the whole parasha 3-4 hours, one letter is missing, you cannot fix. You have to put it in his hand. You cannot just go and take it and erase it a little bit and put it like nothing happened. It's going to be pasul. That's what the Kesed the Sofer writes, that a person that's a sofer needs to have more yirat shamayim than a shochet. Why? Because a sofer, nobody knows what he's doing in his room. Right? He could be writing something, nobody knows what he's thinking, what he's doing, where he messed up, what questions he had along the way. Right? So it says not only that, even the parashot need to be written in order. For example, if a person wrote the first parasha, Kadesh Li, then he wrote the second parasha, Vayaki V'yacha, then he wrote the third parasha, Shema, and then he wrote the fourth parasha, which is Vayam Shema, and then he realized that the first parasha is not kosher. What does he do with the other 3 parashiot? Can he just write the first parasha again and just connect it to all the other ones? Not allowed. Why? Every single parasha needs to be written in order. If you wrote all those 4 in order, and the first one was not kosher, the other 3 now, you cannot just add another first one and put it a part of the other 3. You need to find the first parasha that was written before these 3. Meaning to say, these 3 now that were written in order, the first one that became not kosher, it doesn't invalidate these 3. It's just that these 3 cannot be used with the first parasha that's going to be written now. You need to find a parasha that was written before these 3. What I mean by that is like this. You have the 4 parashot that we just mentioned. Say the first one became not kosher. The other 3 afterwards are kosher. I can't now write the first one after these 3, but if I could find another sofer, or I myself, if I have a first parasha that I wrote before these 3 were written, but it happened to be something older or from a few years ago, then I could connect it to these first 3, to these 3. But I can't write it afterwards.
Right.
So what I mean, I can't write it afterwards.
Yeah, it's one long.
Yeah.
And you mean by the Rosh, there's 4.
By the yad, by the rosh doesn't make a difference. By the yad, if you would make a mistake, now you would have to cut it. You would have to write another one. Depends where it is, right? If it's the last parasha, right, Yam Shemua, if that one came out not kosher, then you could just rewrite that one. And you could cut it. You could reconnect it with glue, and that's fine. That makes it like one, right? That makes it like one. Now, he says over here also, everything that needs to be written with kosher ink. It is halakha, there's halachot which teach us which ingredients are allowed to be made with kosher ink. You cannot just go and randomly buy any ink from the store and decide that this is the ink that you want to write it with. It needs to have halachot. It needs to be certain ingredients. It needs to be black. It needs to be something that's erasable. It needs to be something that absorbs into the cloth. And therefore also those halachot would also apply that a person needs to make sure that he buys ink that's kosher. There was one time, this one guy, he came out with ink and he was claiming that the ink that he came out with is ink that's going to last forever. He said, you write it once and you're never going to need to do anything again. Why? Nothing is ever going to happen. It's going to last forever. He put different ingredients in there. He put rubber in there, right? put rubber in there, and he said that it's waterproof also. Generally, anything that has to do with safrut is not waterproof. A little bit water goes on it, it can mess up the whole thing. And you got to be very careful, especially if the sulfur, if it's hot, whatever, if he's sweating, one little drop will fall on it, will destroy it. Right? So therefore, but this person said that he made ink that's waterproof. So he came out also that said that his recipe of ink is the original recipe from the time of the Chachamim, and all the recipes of ink today are all kosher b'diavad, which there's what to talk about on that. He's not fully wrong, right? But he said that all the inks that they were not made, he has the original recipe, and he wanted to say everybody else is no good, whatever. It was a big war for like a few years. He made a very big deal about it. This was a long time ago, at least 10 years ago. So people started to buy his ink. It became very popular. But then it was new. You don't know the outcome of something until you give it time. Years later, they realized that his ink might have been, okay, you're right, waterproof and so on. But what he forgot to mention also is that the ink doesn't absorb into the cloth very well. And I personally saw, I took a tefillin of a head tefillin that somebody brought to me to check. I opened it, I took the tefillin, you have to open in the head, you have to fold it and you put it in, and there's a lot of pressure there. So when you take it out, you open it. So when I opened it, since he has like a rubber ingredient in there, so the letter, because it's folded, so the letters from the inside are connected to the parchment on the back from the outside. So when I opened it, one of the letters just came off the cloth like this, like a piece of rubber, like it just came off like this. Literally didn't absorb into the properly. And when I saw that, I was like, wow. And then they came out with a letter that this cloth, it has this issue, that it could come off. Like you could literally like take it off. It doesn't absorb into the cloth very well. So I guess certain things you didn't foresee properly. But Lamase, ink also has to be kosher. Also, next halakha, you have parchment. You have the actual skin, the animal skin that they take in order to write the tefillin on. They take animal skins, and it's processed animal skins. They process it. They put it, there's machine made and there's handmade. We'll talk about machine made and handmade later on. It's much more complex, the sugya, the topic of machine made and handmade. But he said every single letter that's being written on the tefillin or mezuzah or whatever else it might be, Sefer Torah, needs to be mukaf gvil. Mukaf gvil means as follows. Say if I have the cloth and I'm writing the letter, I need to have the cloth white all around the letter. I mean, every single letter needs to have white cloth all around it. What that means is that if there's two letters that are touching each other, it's not kosher. Why? Because once you have two letters touching each other, each one of those letters don't have cloth all around it, because they're touching each other, right? And therefore, that would be something that would not be kosher as is. And when you have two letters touching each other, so you have to know whether or not those letters changed what they are. We need to say if you have a vav, right? And before the vav you have a chaf, and they're touching each other a little bit, a lot of times the chaf and the vav will become into a mem, right? Since the chaf and the vav could become into a mem, so now you cannot just separate it, because now it's a different letter. You're not allowed to make anything kosher by separating, right? Therefore, if you have two letters touching, as is not kosher. You have to make sure that the letter did not change what it initially was. Therefore, if a person wants to separate them, it would be okay as long as the letters didn't change what they were supposed to be, right? As long as it's a bet and they touch a little bit. You could still see it's a bet and a bet. You're allowed to separate it, but you have to say l'shem kiddushat or whatever it might be when you separate it. Amen. So, it says like this. So now if you have two letters touching, by the way, you should know, as somebody that's been checking for a while, this is one of the most common things that I find. One of the most common problems that I find at Tefilin Mezuzot is letters touching. People miss it. There's nothing you can do about it. It happens. Right? Therefore, when you get from a sofer, he needs to make sure to begin with, to try to make it as perfect as possible. Because if he writes too quick or a little bit sloppy, and there's letters touching in random places, sometimes the person that checks it afterwards doesn't realize. Person puts on the tefillin or mezuzah, whatever it might be, it's not kosher. Two letters are touching, not kosher. You need to say l'shem kiddushat mezuzah, whatever it might be, and you need to separate those two letters in order that it should have full white around it, right? Also, not only do you need to write the letters on the actual cloth, on the parchment, and it needs to have all white around it, but also on a lot of the letters you need to have something called ziyunim. You need to have something called tagim. You need to put crowns on the letters. It's a halakha. You need to put crowns on the letters. As the machloket haposkim, if a person did not put those crowns on the letters, whether it's kosher altogether. The Shulchan Aruch said it's kosher b'diavad, borderline kosher. Not everybody agrees it's kosher, borderline kosher, right? And these crowns need to be like a stick with a round ball on top, right? Also, a lot of times, unfortunately, also you see, a lot of the things that I see a lot is a lot of times that these crowns are not touching the letter. Say if you have a whole tefillin or mezuzah, and the crown is not touching the letter, what would be the halakha? The halakha would be that it would be b'diavad. Right? The whole tefillin, you have a whole tefillin, everything's nice, but if you have one crown that's not touching the letter, of the letters Shatnez Get, Shin, Gimel, all those letters that require it. If you have the one crown that's not touching the letter, the whole tefillin will be kasher only b'diavad. Done everything good, but one not. And not only that, the Ramami panel says it's even worse than b'diavad. He says because since we make the stick and we make the round ball on top, the Ramami panel says that if it's disconnected from the letter, since that stick with the actual ball on top looks like a letter Zayin, it's like a little letter Zayin, he held that that's considered like an extra letter in the tefillin and makes the whole thing pasul. Makes the whole thing pasul. We don't hold like that, but you see that it's very severe, right? That even the crowns and the letters need to be done the right way. Even if the crowns and the letters are touching each other, it's a problem. You have to be able to fix them and separate them, right? So therefore, you have to write the letter, and even when you write the letter, you have to make sure that the letter is written api halakha. Each letter could be messed up in many different ways. In many different ways, each letter could be messed up in a way that's not kosher. I recently had a question, a very nice mezuzah I saw, the letter nun. All the way on the bottom on the right side of the nun, a little tiny drop of ink went a little bit down, and it became into a gimel. Not good. Became pasul. Little tiny thing turned it into already in letter of a gimel. Right? He says, not only that tefillin also needs to be written by hand. It needs to be written with a person's right hand also. If a person's a lefty, he could write with his left hand, but preferably, api Kabbalah, there are those that are machmir not to use lefties as sofrim. Right? Api Kabbalah, there's a not to use lefties as sofrim. Next halakha is going to be something called sirtut. Sirtut is if you look at the tefillin or you look at a mezuzah, it has lines. Same mezuzah has 22 lines. Tefillin has 4 lines or 7 lines, depends on the hand or the head. Those lines, right, by a mezuzah must have. If mezuzah doesn't have those lines, the whole thing is not kosher. By tefillin, it doesn't need to have. The main thing by the tefillin, you need to have only the first line. According to the Mechaber, only the first line. According to the Ashkenazim, they say the first line, the last line, and on the sides, right? But what will you find over here? What could possibly go wrong over here if you don't have the... I'll tell you, by making the lines in a mezuzah is so severe, I could tell you how you could find that it'll be problematic. Sometimes, if the lines were not made right the first time, with time those lines fade and they go away because they use them as started. They take something and they make the lines, right? So if you don't make it good, you don't make it proper, it'll eventually fade and lose its status. Then mezuzah is pasul without the lines. If you don't have sirtut, it's pasul. What about if you don't have a line on one word? How could you not have a line on one word? I'll tell you. Say you made a mistake, you erase the word. When you erase the word, usually you take away the line. The sofer has to know, I have to remake the line. You have to say L'Shem Kiddushat Mezuzah, you have to remake the line. He forgot, he didn't remake the line, he wrote the word, right? So if it's only one word that doesn't have the line, the mezuzah is only kasher b'diavad. Very minimally kasher, on the lowest level possible, could be a nice writing, but it's b'diavad. Now, if the line is not there, and for example, if the sofer made a mistake, he erased the whole row. Now, he didn't put a line on a whole row, the mezuzah is pasul. I've seen this one time. I was checking a mezuzah. I saw that the sofer made a mistake. He erased the whole line, right? And then he rewrote the whole line. What did I do? I immediately started to check to make sure that he put the sirtut, that he put the line over there, the indentation. When you take the lines in the mezuzah, I immediately went to check to see if he made an indentation in the mezuzah klaf, and I saw he didn't do it. He wrote the whole line without making the indentation. And the mezuzah is pasul. Nice mezuzah. But it's something that you have to notice. Sirtut, you must have sirtut. You must have that indentation in the cloth, 22 lines inside. right? Those lines must have.
You can't
Right?
make it.
No, once it's ready like this, you can't do it afterwards. It needs to be there before.
They're engraved in, or it's
They're engraved in with a metal thing, and if you don't engrave it properly, it could pop back up. Like it won't stay for a long time, right? So therefore, automatically you must make sure that those lines are there as well. You need to make sure that they're done right as well. Also, the first time. So one time somebody gave me mezuzot to check. I saw that those lines were very, very fade. You could barely see them. I needed a magnifying glass to see them, right? So it's only just a matter of time before they completely fade. You have to make sure that they're done right to begin with. Now, the next halakha it brings over here is to make the klaf. How do they make the klaf? Right? They take the klaf, they take animal hides. Preferably, you should use skins from an animal that was a baby. Meaning to say, api halacha, the only skins that you're allowed to use are kosher animals. Any kosher animals okay, except fish skins we don't use, right? But any kosher animals okay. Even chicken, even meat, whatever it might be. But today, we use animals, real animal skins we use. The Shulchan Aruch and Api Kabbalah also, it's preferable to use shlil, which is after they shech the mother, the baby comes out of the stomach. A lot of times the baby comes out of the stomach, that baby that comes out of the stomach, that's the best skin to use. Api Kabbalah also because it never had any taste of Olam Hazeh yet, right? And the majority of a lot of the skins today on the market are being done from this skin, shlil. Now, when they take the skins, they need to do the ibud process. Ibud process is they need to process the skins in order to make it suitable to be written on. So now there's different ways of doing it. There's hand way of doing it. You put it inside, and when you actually make it, you have to say before you're making the skins, you have to say for Sefer Torah, I'm making it l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah. If you didn't say it, it's not kosher. For Tefilin mezuzot, you need to say l'shem kiddushat Tefilin, l'shem kiddushat mezuzah, whatever it might be. Otherwise, it's not kosher. Today, what do? They say l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah, and once you do it for Sefer Torah, it's kosher for everything beneath it. If I do it for mezuzah, I can't use it for Sefer Torah because it's less kiddushat, right? Therefore, I say l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah, and I can use it for everything beneath it. Some even make a condition. I'm using it for Sefer Torah, Tefilin, Mezuzot, Megillot, everything, and whatever I need, right? But
You say you're using it for Tefilin and then after use it for Mezuzah?
yes, as long as you're going one level lower, right, you're okay. Because once you do it for the higher one, you can do it for the lower one. But if you do it for the lower one, it doesn't have enough kedusha to be done for the higher one, right? But now the question is, it needs to be ibud lishma. You need to do it for the purpose of what it's going to be written for. For if it's a tefillin, you need to say l'shem kedushat tefillin. To Sefer Torah, l'shem kedushat Sefer Torah. Now, the handmade ones, they put it into a big barrel, and every day they come and they shove it in more, and they turn the barrel manually, right? And this process can happen for like 8-9 days. Then they take it out, they take off all the hairs, and they put it in for another few days, and then take it out, and they continue the process of making it. Now, in the machine-made ones, it's very easy. What do? Big factory. Today this became a multi-million-dollar business, you should know. This making parchments and skins it's very big. Just the parchments for the Sefer Torah cost $7,000. Just the skins. Not just the skins cost $7,000. Now imagine like this every day, right? Tons. People are writing Sefer Torah every single day, all the time, right? So now you have the parchments to the skin. They take it, they put it in a machine. What do? Press the button. L'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah. Press the button. Now the machines do everything. Takes everything in and out, flips it every day, does everything for you. Yeah, the machine made. Now the question is, it needs to be done lishma. You need to make it for the purpose of what it's supposed to be there for. Meaning to say that if you want it to be done for Sefer Torah, it needs to l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah. It needs to have your koach, your intervention. You need to be one doing it. So there's a machloket haposkim. The Chachamim discussed whether or not you say l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah and you press the button and the electricity is doing everything. Is that considered like you really did it, or is that considered like electricity did it? Electricity cannot do things l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah, right? So if I say l'shem kiddushat Sefer Torah, I press the electricity, but it's not really me. The electricity is doing everything over there, right? So there's the machloket the poskim. Some that say no, since you first started, that was your first energy. Everything there also sort of comes off after you. Some that say no, your energy. You did it like this, your koach already right there and then already is over. You press the button, energy is very, everything's very automatic afterwards. That's considered like a monkey did it, like kof ba'alma. That's not considered like you anymore. And therefore, Whether or not it's machine-made or handmade, it's a discussion amongst the poskim, whether or not it's kosher, is it b'diavad, is it mehudar, is it lechatchila, right? What exactly is the halakha? First of all, machine-made, half the price. Machine-made cloth, half the price, automatically. One mezuzah skin that you buy, handmade, $17, $16. Machine-made, $7, $8. Well, it adds up to a very big expense. People that write 400 or 500 mezuzot a year, adds up to a lot of money, right? So now, in the machine-made, some that say it's mehudar. A lot of poskim hold that it's mehudar. Why? Once I put it inside the actual chemicals by myself, the fact that I press the machine afterwards and the machine takes it in and out and turns it doesn't make a difference. I started the process, everything after that really is still coming off of me. That's I would say the main accepted opinion, that we accept it as if it's mehudar, even though those that even say it's mehudar say you should try to get the handmade one. It's why? Just to get yourself out of machlokit. Rav Yaakov Yosef was very strict. He was very against handmade cloth. He used to say that handmade cloth is not, he was very against machine-made cloth. He used to say that machine-made cloth is not kosher. Right, Rav Yosef Cohen, one of the biggest sofer teachers in the Eretz Yisrael, he said, why would you pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a Sefer Torah and use machine-made cloth? Right, this is safek chumash. You just paid $30,000, $40,000, safek chumash. Right, if the cloth is not kosher, you bought yourself a chumash. Why? Spend a few more $1,000s. Get handmade cloth. You know, according to everybody, handmade cloth, everything is done by hand. You say l'shem kedushat, whatever it might be, it's 100% mehudar. So therefore, there are many poskim that are machmir. Rav Yitzchak Yosef has a tshuva. He says it's good, but it's good to be mahader to get handmade cloth. Everybody says the same thing, right? It's better. Rav Dalsky, I asked him also once if machine-made cloth is mehudar. He told me it's mehudar. I asked Rav Yaakov Hillel, is machine-made cloth mehudar? He told me it's mehudar. Now, it's mehudar, right? But I remember, I think I asked Rabbi Shador and Oldstone, and I think he told me to use handmade cloth, but I think he also told me it's mehudar, right? But today, Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of handmade cloth on the market. If you want something good, always request handmade cloth, especially for tefillin and mezuzot. Rav Vosner told me that for tefillin you should be makbid. To have handmade cloth, for mezuzot you could be more mekel, right? You could be more mekel. That's that. Now, if a person put the actual hides, put the skins inside the machines, and he didn't say l'shem kedushat Sefer Torah, whatever it might be, it's not kosher. It's pasul, right? You need to actually be the one doing it. Now, in some companies, and the lower grade companies, they have goyim working there, right? If I go to the goy and I tell the goy, say l'shem kedushat Sefer Torah, and do all the work, so there's a machloket, the Rambam and the Rosh, whether that works. Right? So since it's a machloket, some factors stay away from it, and you have in a business like this where there's a lot of money being done, right? You're always going to have people doing the right thing and you have people doing the wrong thing. There's nothing you can do about it, right? It was like 2 years ago, the police pulled over a couple of Arabs. They found so much cloth, so much parchment for Sefer Torah in their car. They're asking where they're going. They were going to deliver it to a Jewish village somewhere. So you see, these people, they forging stickers, making it in Arab villages, cost them nothing, and so you don't know. Recently, somebody was trying to sell straps for tefillin, right? Very shocking. Very good straps for tefillin, very good ones wholesale cost $100, right? These, he wants to sell each pair $12 each. Straps, black on black, $12 each. I got curious, why is he selling it for so cheap? I spoke to one of the big people in Israel that supply skins for all these people. He told me that the hechsher that he had over there, the rabbi said he never gave him a hechsher for years already. He was forging it, and now he doesn't want to get stuck with it. He's trying to flip it on the market as fast as possible. And I told him, is this guy reliable? He told me no. He's very, very sticky over there, right? So many people might not know. Right? Many people might not know. You come, you say, I want black on black straps. You don't know where it's made. You don't know how it's made. You don't know where it comes from. Right? So you have to know. Right? Is it a gosh gachan? Is it handmade? Is it machine made? Right? Who are the workers over there? Do they rely on any kulot? Right? Are they yirei shamayim? What are they doing there? Right? These are things that people have to be on top of. Now, okay, So now he's going to get into the actual kashrus of the letters. I don't want to get into the kashrus of the letters today. It's very complex, so I'll just give a little introduction. Every single letter in Safrut, maybe next week we'll bring a board and we'll go through the letters and I'll explain what the other problems, various problems could be in the letters. Every single letter, right, in Safrut has to be done lefi halacha, fully, 100% the way it's supposed to be done lefi halacha. Right? The Zohar says just the tip of the aleph, just the tip of the aleph on top, right? There's thousands of worlds that just stand on that tip of the aleph, right? So now you have people that'll fly through it, everything is very sloppy, you don't know what's really written over there. Not only that, the Sofrim need to have a lot of Yirat Shamayim because a lot of problems could come about during writing, and if a person is not on top of not a Yirat Shamayim, things could go wrong, he might not even realize. Things could go wrong, he might not even realize. Also, the Ramchal says, the Kiddusha, the holiness of the actual Tefilin or the Mezuzah comes from the holiness of the person. If the person is holy and a person is righteous, that holiness brings itself down to the Kiddusha of the Tefilin, and the Tefilin has much more power, becomes much more holy, becomes much more stronger. It has the ability to affect a person much more. It has the ability to protect a person much more. It has much more strength to it, right? As opposed to somebody that's not, it's much less. But B'ezrat Hashem, we'll stop here, and next week we'll get into the letters. Anybody need to say Kaddish? No? Okay.